Number 8. Double Life. Andrei Romanovich Chikatilo, better known as the Butcher of Rostov, was one of the most prolific serial killers in all of Russian history. The man is said to have confessed to 56 murders in total and was convicted of 53. His horrific spree lasted from 1978 to 1990, during which, in this 12-year period, there were numerous instances where Chikatilo could have been caught, but wasn't. Chikatilo eventually managed to secure a position in academia, teaching Russian literature and philosophy at a local college. The first recorded instance of sexual assault is said to have occurred during that time. Chikatilo swam towards a 15-year-old student and touched her inappropriately. He was not reprimanded for the offense, but was asked to respectfully resign on his own. Interestingly enough, Chikatilo was actually incompetent, and several of his romantic relationships, of which there were only a few, had failed because of his inability to have intercourse. It was only after he had committed his first murder that Chikatilo realized he derived sexual pleasure from assaulting, raping, and eventually murdering his victims. During all of this time, Chikatilo managed to keep steady jobs, be a father for his children, and overall respected man in his community. His demeanor raised no alarms, except maybe his often creepy gaze. However, that was largely dismissed when it really shouldn't have been. Police eventually became suspicious of Chikatilo after his second arrest. The first arrest was for petty theft. Investigators needed to extract a confession from the man to confirm their suspicions. But it was only after a psychologist read his 65-page assessment of the Butcher of Rostov that Chikatilo tearfully confessed to all 56 murders. Andrei Chikatilo was executed via a single gunshot behind the right ear on the 14th of February, 1994. Number 7. 3 teens, 1 hammer. In perhaps one of the most chilling cases to ever come to light, 3 teenagers were arrested after they were linked to nearly 20 cases of mutilation and murders and well over hundreds of cases of animal abuse. Viktor Senko and Igor Sopranyuk were seemingly normal teenagers. They came from good homes, they were well liked in school, sociable enough, and raised no red flags. Senko's father even served as the district prosecutor, while Sopranyuk's father was a personal pilot of a former Ukrainian president. No evidence in the world could incriminate Senko and Sopranyuk because the 2 teens, for lack of a better word, were too boring to be considered killers. In a 4-year pursuit, police were contacted and sent to 20 different crime scenes where men and women were found lying either dead or minutes from it, with their heads severely smashed in, their bodies mutilated, and their belongings still on them. The victims ranged from the young to the elderly, women to men, and poor to well-off. There were no signs of sexual assault or theft. All investigators found were bloodied remains. Concurrent to the police investigation that was going on, Senko and Sopranyuk, along with third accomplice Alexander Ganja, uploaded gore videos of their crimes to the internet. The sheer confidence of these uploads was matched with the fact that they remained undetected by police forces until the teens were arrested in 2007. For their crimes, Senko and Sopranyuk were sentenced to life in prison. Ganja, however, managed to evade lengthy imprisonment by testifying against the two and only served 9 years. After his release, Andrew Ganja has been said to have married and fathered 2 children. His current whereabouts are unknown. Number 6. The Chessboard Killer. The first murder is like first love. You can never forget it. Alexander Yuryevich Pakushkin, also known as the Bista Park Killer and the Chessboard Killer, is one of the most horrific serial killers to have ever lived. The man is reported to have been influenced in part by another notorious maniac, Andrei Chikatilo, who we mentioned before. Born in Moscow, Pachushkin spent most of his child living with his mother at 2 Karanskaya Street. His killing spree lasted from 1992 until his arrest in 2006. During this period, Pachushkin is reported to have killed 60 men and women, although he was only convicted of killing 48. The Bista Park Killer got his name from the fact that many crimes were carried out in the Bista Park area. His first reported kill was in July of 1992. He took the life of a classmate who had refused to take him seriously. This was followed by what Pachushkin dubbed as the, quote, sewer period, during which he would kill homeless men living in the sewers after offering them a drink. The, quote, sewer period lasted from 2001 to 2005 and was was followed by the quote open period from 2005 to 2006. The quote open period was particularly frightening because this is when Pichushkin began to kill in the open and would stuff broken twigs, branches, and vodka bottles into his victims' gaping wounds. Alexander Pichushkin was eventually apprehended in June of 2006 after he was caught on security footage with his last victim, Marina Moskaloyev. For his crimes, Pichushkin was sentenced to serve life in prison. He is currently being held in solitary confinement at the Arctic Penal Colony. Number 5. The Volga Maniac. Psychological evaluation of serial killers suggests that while a majority of them kill because of an insatiable impulse, they're rarely hot-headed in their kills. This is the difference between a serial killer and a killer on a rampage. With that being said, most serial killers have active and dormant periods. Radik Tagirov, dubbed the Volga Maniac, committed all of his crimes between 2011 and 2012. In this short span of 12 months, he had 32 possible victims, although he was only convicted of 26. Tagirov worked as a locksmith in the district of Kazan, where 9 of his victims were slain. Police had been on a mass manhunt for close to a decade after 32 elderly women were found strangled to death in their homes. No apparent signs of sexual abuse was noted on any of the victims, but they were all tortured before they were killed. Investigators relied on biological testing to determine the killer. Tagirov would have been among the 100,000 people the police reportedly tested to find the killer. Both his biological genotype and his footprint led the police to arrest Tagirov on suspicion of murder. His modus operandi was to pose as a social worker and gain entry into the elderly's home. Tagirov would only target women between the ages of 70 and 80 and made sure that those women only lived alone. After the old ladies let him in, he would strangle them to death. Police arrested Radik Tagirov in December of 2020, and he is currently imprisoned, awaiting trial. Number 4. Dungeon of Horrors. 3 years, 7 months, 4 days, and 15 hours. That's how long Elena Samokina and 14-year-old Ekaterina Martinova were kept in confinement in the basement of the Skopinski Maniac's home. He treated the 2 young girls as his sex slaves and would routinely shout out in the basement, "Whose turn is it today? Get out!" The Skopinski Maniac had been building his Dungeon of Horrors, a basement located under his garage that required 2 separate sets of stairs to get to. Each set of stairs led to a locked door. The basement itself had a magnetic door that was some 20 centimeters thick. On September 30th of 2002, Victor approached the 2 young women as they were making their way back home after spending the night out at a disco. The 2 women reported that Victor appeared with a friend, Elena Badukina, who was dressed as a man. Victor gained the girls' trust after buying them chocolate and vodka. The girls claimed that Victor sexually assaulted them after they either passed out or were drugged. The girls lived in deplorable conditions and were subjected to sexual, physical, and emotional abuse daily. When they finally managed to sneak a note to the outside world, they were rescued. For his crimes, Viktor Mokov was sentenced to 17 years in prison. He believed the sentence was far too harsh, considering how he hadn't, quote, killed anybody. On March 3rd, 2021, Victor was released. He says that he regrets what he has done and is about to get married soon. Number 3. The Academy Maniacs. Artem Anofriev and Nikita Litkin, also known as the Academy Maniacs, were one of the youngest known murderous duos in all of Russian history. The pair collectively killed 6 people and injured 9. Their spree lasted from December of 2010 until they were apprehended in April of 2011. Artem and Nikita were both born to single mothers who worked the night shift. The boys would take this time to sneak out of their homes and go on their murderous rampage. Their modus operandi was nothing but to kill. For example, the pair reportedly murdered their first victim, 12-year-old Daniil Semyonov, simply to train themselves on how to take a life. Between 2011 and 2012, the pair would routinely target men, women, and children whom they believed were vulnerable or distracted enough. The pair would approach their victims from the back, hit them in the head with a mallet or a hammer, dismember their bodies, and then went about their way. The pair would also focus on killing in the State University area. Growing up, neither of the 2 young men displayed any psychological tendencies to commit crimes, although Artem was admittedly reported as being reserved and weird at times. Nikita, on the other hand, was reportedly suffering from multiple mental conditions, primarily depression. In 2011, the pair was caught when Artem's uncle turned over a flash drive from a camera featuring videos of the young men performing the killings. They were subsequently arrested and gave alternating testimonies about what occurred. And during these alternating testimonies, neither of the two sold the other out. In fact, they both maintained that they alone committed the crimes. Nevertheless, a court ruled in 2012 that for their crimes, Nikita would serve 25 years in prison and Artem would be imprisoned for life. Number 2, the scariest man in Russian history. Mikhail Viktorovich Popkov would routinely take an active part in the investigations for the crimes that he had committed himself. Also known as the Angarsak Maniac, Popkov is known in Russia as being the man who killed the most people, more than Andrei Chikatilo and Alexander Pakushkin. Between 1992 and 2010, Popkov had 20 confirmed kills, 53 possible kills, and 83 confessed murders. The man had also been serving as a police officer in the Irkutsk region in Russia. Not much is known about Popkov's life before. He was born into an ordinary family, he had a decent upbringing, and was married with one child. On the police force, Popkov was remembered as being the jolliest person to be around. He had earned the nickname Misha Gwynplaine, the man who smiles, by Victor Hugo. Sinister enough, Misha Gwynplaine was a reference to a man who disfigured his own face into a perpetual smile, carving his cheeks at both edges. Sound familiar? What exactly changed in the man who had only begun to kill in his late 30s and displayed no aggressive tendencies all throughout his youth? One theory suggests that Popkov had caught his wife committing adultery. Although he had, quote, forgiven her for the sake of their child, he began to harbor resentment against, quote, immoral women. Popkov would patrol the area in his police uniform at night and pick up drunk women or prostitutes and offer them a ride home. This is according to Popkov's testimony. The women who would accept his advances deserved to be killed. Popkov was eventually arrested and sentenced to life in prison after DNA testing linked him to several of the murders. Although today, public outcries still carry on in the USSR demanding Popkov's public execution. Number 1, jealous rage. A plea of temporary insanity would have been granted to Rustem Morosolova, the man being charged with murdering his own wife. However, investigators believe that the attack was premeditated. Why? Rustem had stabbed his wife Alexandra 10 times before throwing her off a balcony of their shared 15th story apartment. Alexandra was later identified after Rustem turned himself in within an hour of the crime. According to the killer, he had lost control of his surroundings and acted, quote, irrationally after getting into a heated argument with his wife. Alexandra and Rustem's married life was far from perfect. Alexandra would frequently post about how her husband disapproved of her career choices and wanted her to quit. Alexandra was a 25-year-old psychologist and sex therapist. She had amassed a significant following on social media. Most of her posts were related to sexual advice for new couples or couples in a rut. The couple had gone to therapy themselves, but nothing came of it. Eventually, Rustem's torment became too much for Alexandra, who began to withdraw from their marriage. Sensing something suspicious going around, the man stabbed his wife 10 times in the neck and abdomen. Rustem Morosolova was apprehended in September of 2021 after he confessed to the crime himself. He is currently awaiting trial. Thanks for watching. Which of these maniacs is the scariest to you? Let us know in the comments down below, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos like these. See you next time on The Bad Badger.